We're going to get started here. Thank you all for coming. A few more people than last week. I like that. maybe our crowd will be. I mean, last month. We are going to do a bit of a two-part program here. We're going to start with Leslie O'Malley to talk about our food scrap diversion program. And then we will cut and then we will come back. And this is a Santa Cruz Neighbors meeting. And I am hosting, I'm Deborah Elston, who's currently the president now. And then we will move on to the second part of our program, which will discuss a whole bunch of different things, mostly about houses in your neighborhood. Leslie.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's so nice to be back in person. We're just getting used to this ourselves. We're done with Zoom, so nice to see everyone. I put together just a few slides for you, and we're about 9 months into the food scrap diversion program residential here in the city of Santa Cruz. But I thought it might be worthwhile to step back and revisit how this became an issue in the first place. And so if we look at, you'll notice a difference up there, food waste and wasted food. We think there's a real difference. But food waste is the single largest material in any landfill, and it certainly is the case for the city of Santa Cruz. We're about 25% at our latest waste characterization study. Methane emissions from food in the landfill rank third in emitters for greenhouse gas emissions. And then an interesting fact is that a typical family of four wastes about $1,600 a year on food that never got eaten. Either it went bad before they ever had a chance to eat it. And then of course, it's pretty obvious that when we waste food, we're wasting the resources to transport it, to grow in the water. So as my title, Waste Reduction Manager, I manage the waste reduction team for the Public Works Department. And we think waste starts with prevention. So we have this little badge. You may have seen our Recycle Right badge, and it starts with refuse. But we get you starting a little higher up that reduce, reuse, recycle 3Rs that we all grew up with. And we think that we can rethink our habits and we can reduce the opportunity to waste, reuse, love your leftovers, recycle, get creative, make something new, and then rot. And you'll notice rot comes way down there at the bottom. Backyard composting is best. But we've learned that we can't compost our way out of this greenhouse gas emissions issue. I have to bring it way back up here. So, why a food scraps diversion program? Well, part of it, besides the obvious reason we should do it, but the state is mandating that we do it. So every jurisdiction in the city of California has been required to roll out some kind of food scrap or composting program. And so that's part of why we've done that. And then also, anybody familiar with the city of Santa Cruz just adopted a new climate action plan, 2030. And so we've recommitted to waste diversion, including food waste diversion, getting that out of the landfill. So in preparing for compliance for 1383, we had to do some things to get ready. Believe it or not, we spent a couple of years trying to get ready for this program, and we did some research and some analyzing. What kind of program should we roll out? What kind of infrastructure does the city have? What do we need to invest in? Anybody live in the Seabright neighborhood? We did a pilot program over there. We gave you a little green 6-gallon pail to see was that the right container. We started a food scrap dropout program almost 4 years ago, where residents could bring their food scraps to a dedicated lock container and bring their food scraps there. And then we've done public education. Hopefully you've seen some of our different things, our newsletters, postcards, social media, and that kind of thing. All right, so why a separate container? You guys are probably familiar with seeing that little brown one. The state mandate said that it had to be brown if you're going to do a separate container, and that's why that's not green like we piloted. Well, we wanted something that had some sort of locking mechanism and that's easy enough to empty. We're also not set up at Denio to combine yard waste and food waste, so that's why that's a part of it. And then we realized that we would have had to drive 7 of our trucks every single day to Marina to the closest industrial composting facility to be able to participate by combining our yard scraps and our food scraps. And we already have a really healthy yard waste diversion program. So those were all some of the factors that led into how we decided on this small 6-gallon pail.
Can I ask you a question? Maybe you're going to answer it.
I will. I promise I'm going to give you lots of time. That's why I'm rushing through these slides. So just a little update. We're almost 9 months in, as I said. We're currently diverting 35 to 40 tons of food scraps from the landfill every single week by collecting from our residential and our commercial. That's taken up to Dineo Lake, and it is in mechanically processed. We're not a composting program here. It's a food scrap diversion program. That mash gets all wound up. You notice it's just pretty much food scraps, nice and clean, not many bags. Gets turned into a mash about the consistency of applesauce. You artists may know that when you mix every color in the rainbow, you get a beautiful shade of brown. So that's what our mash looks like. It is taken over the hill over every 10 to 14 days to Santa Clara to a program called Sustainable Organic Solutions, and it gets further processed and it becomes dehydrated pellet feed for pigs. No, we're not feeding them slop right out of the bin. Other byproducts are additive for biodiesel and fertilizer. And that's currently what's happening. Our long-term plan is that we want to send it right here in our own backyard to the wastewater treatment facility right down the road from Dineo. So we've been listening. We've had a lot of feedback, as you can imagine. Lots of positive. Some, I don't like to say negative because I think they're learning opportunities for us. Some of the positive of the feedback we've received is people like the convenience of putting their food scrap out to the curb. They like the size of the pail. It kind of can be hard to clean up, but it's not a big 64-gallon container that you're trying to juggle. One of my favorite pieces of feedback is families are seeing how much food they're actually wasting. When they're putting it in one container, the asparagus they didn't get to, the cherries, the tomato, we get to really see it when we're separating it. And then what I consider the opportunities. So some of it, the pale visibility. When we first rolled out and delivered 16,000 of these last August, you can imagine it was an all hands on deck. Brown, kind of hard to see for the drivers at 4:30 in the morning, right? So then we've been adding these orange reflective tapes. We're also putting blue tape on the top so we can get your address on it. So when the driver empties it, he knows what house to put it back in front of. Other opportunities that we've heard feedback is the performance. Some of these pails are failing, I'm sorry to say. We've been working with the manufacturer of why that might be. They take a lot of wear and tear. But the good news is that for residents that have called us, we've just replaced them, and sometimes that's taking care of the issues. And then one big thing that we've had a lot of feedback is how do we reduce the ick factor? It's pretty gross, right? We don't let you use bags because back to that slide with that screw press, those little bags get wrapped around the gear and then we have to stop the machinery and get them all cut out. So we do get some plastic bags, but the more we get, the more problematic it is. So one solution a resident offered up is that they're lining their pail with corn husks. These are dry. They create a little resistance. The best way is to put your food scraps in the freezer for as long as you can. But like me, I don't have a lot of room in my freezer to be free food scraps. But you find ways to put it in a transfer container before you deliver it and put it into the bigger container. But I thought that was kind of ingenious. This whole pack right here was $4.99. A box of bio bags, if we're allowing you to use them, was $20. So that's an idea. Another alternative people have been using is they're lining their pail with a plastic bag, but then when it's time for them to put it out at the curb, they're tipping the contents into the food scrap container and throwing the bag away. Then it's just a light rinse. We are working with the drivers to make sure that they get the pail as empty as good as possible. I have to say, if you put something really sticky in there and it's just sitting at the curb for a week, getting more scientific, it may have a little more trouble coming out. But the drivers have big, long handled spatulas. This is a hand service. It's really labor intensive, but Joe, our driver, he's always coming back and telling me stories of how he's working with residents and trying to make it work better. So we see this as a real partnership and an opportunity to get all that food scraps out of the landfill, to make sure that the city of Santa Cruz is in compliance with the state mandate. And now I'm time for questions.
Well, I noticed that Gray Bears has these, you know, like professional or whatever you call them, because my compost would never handle that. But I was wondering where you were taking it, so it's too bad I wasn't over here.
Yeah, so Gray Bears, there is for their own site. Everyone's familiar with Gray Bears, great partner in the community. So they take a lot of food donations and they end up with a lot of food waste that they can distribute. So those earth tubs are run on a volunteer program, and they create their own soil amendment that they turn around and give out.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it for the city.
No.
So where are you hoping to do it then, so we don't have to send it over there?
So we'll be continuing with the same process of turning it into that mash, but then the mash will go to the wastewater treatment facility, and it'll be incorporated into energy to help run the facility. So we ran a pilot program to see if the facility could take it, and it worked well. But now we just have to scale up because we're just probably halfway in, and we're already at 40 tons. Ideally, I'd love to see our numbers going down, but the reality is there's a lot of food scraps out there that we still need to get to and collect.
So is it just happening in the city of Santa Cruz?
Just in the city of Santa Cruz. And that was some interesting challenges that we went through in January this year, because you may have heard headlines and news that everyone said, just put your food scraps in your yard waste container. We're like, no, don't do that here. And so we had to straighten out, because all around us, the city of Santa Cruz operates, it's this little island. We have our own facilities and our own public works department. We can't do it the same way, combining our yard waste and our food scraps. So we are doing it a little differently. Everyone else around us gets the convenience of combining their food scraps and their yard waste. It couldn't get much easier, but then you have this big 64-gallon cart you've got to try and figure out how to. Yes.
Would you suggest to keep raccoons from getting into?
Thank you for asking. So that's some of the performance failure we've seen after we've worked out that you have ensured that these little ears, these little tabs, are locked underneath this flat, the tabs on the handle. That once you ensure that, the other thing that people are finding is if you move this all the way forward with the tabs underneath, if a raccoon comes to knock over, they can't get into it. So some raccoons are really smart. They're like, oh, I'm going to keep working on this. So we're dealing with that. The driver's trying to clean it up. Sometimes just replacing the pail, because some of these arms were a little loose. So that's some of the stuff that we're working
If they knock it over and move the handle out of the way, I put a bunch of.
And you know what? And that's something, if that's a solution that is working for you, Joe, the driver I mentioned, he's one of 3 drivers collecting food scraps all over the city, and he's happy to work with residents. Whatever you can do that makes it work better for you, they're willing to work with. Any other questions?
Restaurants, I could see a huge amount of food scraps. Restaurants, how do you build that?
So they get the larger container, a 64-gallon or a 1 yard or a 2 yard. And we have a separate route that comes and collects it. So it's a different truck. The residential, they're hand emptying these little pails, but the big trucks with the arms. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Any chance we can have a smaller container?
That like this one? You bet you can. So I put a bunch of business cards, my business cards on the back table. If you'd like one of these transfer containers, please reach out to me. I'll have one of my staff deliver one to your house. If you'd like the orange reflector tape to go on your pail, we'll get that to you. If you're willing to work with us and you'll keep out and try to make it work, we're happy to help you make it work. So yes, give you a transfer container, no problem. Just reach out to me.
And then that smaller container though can't go out.
No, because this one for sure doesn't have any kind of thing to secure it.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, it's confusing because we have seen a couple people, when we rolled out those 16,000 pails last August, over the course of a week, we had all sorts of helpers. And then we started seeing these appear in multifamilies and all sorts of people. So we've had a little learning curve trying to get it back under control. But yeah, so this one is really for your countertop, and then this one goes out of the curb.
So you're not planning to do smaller containers though for the curb?
I can't find one. This is really the smallest container. I looked really hard. These are very popular in Australia and Europe. They use this particular container for the curbside collection program. We think that the brown seems to have a little different plastic resin makeup than the green, but the manufacturer says not. We didn't see the same issues or concerns with the green pails that we saw with this one. But if you guys run across something, you know, please share it with me. I'm happy to look at it. Just keep in mind when we're planning this program, we have to figure out a system that works on large scale. Robert, did you have a question?
Oh, truly, Leslie, first of all, I think you said that the state said that it has to be more room.
Yes. So
Why is that?
well, I know. So believe it or not, they're trying to get some uniformity into the color recycling bins. What a novel concept. My mom lives in Denver and they have purple recycling bins. Isn't that crazy? Green has to be yard-based containers. If you're commingling the yard waste and the food scraps, then it can be a green container. But if you're getting food scraps separately, it has to be a brown container. We had to order all new inventory to turn our garbage containers into gray. So it's a state mandate. So they're trying to just get some uniform.
In case somebody from out of town comes and collects our garbage.
Right.
My other question is, I am astounded that you're collecting 30 to 40 tons of food scraps a week. I'm wondering how much of that, take up to bag, is from commercial.
We can break that down. I didn't have a chance. My colleague Manny Ortiz, who's the operations superintendent, he has some really spiffy software as a Demio that we can go across the scale. This is commercial, this is residential. So I can get that information.
But I would presume it's just commercial.
You know, it's about half and half,
Really?
believe it or not. And it'll tip when we get higher participation. All those storms, we recognize that we had some floatawayers. These make really handy storage devices we have found. The day we delivered them, we saw people walking down the street with 6 of them, you know, relocating them. So it's been a little Easter egg hunt, you know, trying to keep it going.
Oh, it's better than taking a bicycle.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Any other questions?
Okay,
All
well,
right.
thank you very much.
My
That
pleasure.
was really
Grab
thorough.
a card and